If you think 2026 is just going to be another okay year for racing games, let me tell you, you are very wrong. There are releases coming for PS5, Xbox Series, and Nintendo Switch that promise everything from old school arcade for those who just want speed and chaos, to serious simulation for those who enjoy tweaking every detail of the car like a team mechanic. And I'll be honest, there are games here where just watching the trailer made me want to grab the controller and do just one more lap for 2 hours straight. So buckle up, because now we're going full throttle into the 10 best racing games launching in 2026. The full launch of Assetto Corsa Evo is set for 2026, and the expectation is that version 1 will arrive much more robust than early access, both in content and in the refinement of physics and the feeling behind the wheel. For me, what sells Evo isn't how many cars it has, but rather this promise of driving with a more lively feel. The official material speaks of a revolutionary physics model, with a new tire model, improved suspension dynamics, and more visceral force feedback, the kind that makes you feel the asphalt talking to your hands the whole time. And then comes one of the boldest ideas, the free roam in the Eifel region around the Nürburgring, which Kunos mentioned as something planned during early access with a window pointing to early 2026. If this fits well with the Assetto Identity Roots simulation, real narrow roads, serious physics, it could become that mode you open just to take a spin, and before you know it, you've spent an hour testing cars, setups, and that sensation of fluidity in the corners. Initially, early access started with 20 cars, and version 1 inches 2026 aims for around 100 cars. This is the kind of number that, if accompanied by quality modeling, sound, behavior, transforms Evo into a game you can live in for years, not just race a dozen tracks and get bored. I love seeing the game mature update after update. There were big packages with cars and tracks and a heavy list of improvements in physics, audio, and behavioral adjustments, tires, drivetrain, ABS, and transmissions. If the pace of evolution continues until the full launch in 2026, Evo has everything to be that sim that doesn't try to impress you with gimmicks. It wins you over because you feel the car changing, reacting, and challenging you in an honest way.
For the data, but stick around, okay?
Sounds good. I'll enjoy the place.
Wreckfest 2 is coming in hot in 2026, and this is one of those sequels that takes the recipe of the first game and doubles down on the destruction, physics, and unbridled fun. The full release is scheduled for before the 31st of March 2026, ending the early access period that began back in March 2025. And Bugbear Entertainment promises the game will leave early access much more robust with a reimagined career mode, skill-based matchmaking, mod support via Steam Workshop, local split screen, and a ton of new cars and tracks. The big highlight here is the completely rebuilt Romu physics engine, which Bugbear says was redone from scratch to leverage modern hardware and deliver maximum precision in demolition physics and vehicle dynamics. And man, from the videos and reports of those who played in early access, you can see it's not just talk. Cars deform in a more organic way. Components come loose with more detail. You see drive shafts spinning, exposed engines, parts falling at crazy angles, and the audio has been totally improved, described as a game changer. It's that type of upgrade that turns every crash into a small work of destructive art. Regarding content, early access started with 4 cars and 4 tracks, but the roadmap for the full launch promises to expand this massively. Fully customizable cars you can share with other players, special challenges with unconventional vehicles like a motorhome, imagine the madness, and tracks ranging from high-speed circuits to insane courses with ramps, intersections, and oncoming traffic. Not to mention the demolition derby modes, which have always been the heart of Wreckfest, now with larger arenas and even more satisfying physics. What I find most interesting about Wreckfest 2 is that it doesn't try to be a serious simulator, but it's also not a completely wacky arcade game. It sits in that middle ground where the physics are convincing enough for you to feel the weight of your decisions. A light tap versus slamming your front end into an but at the same time allows for those moments of pure chaos where you lose half the car and still manage to finish the race dragging sparks. The community even debates if there should be a more realistic damage mode, but at the end of the day, the charm lies precisely in being able to cause total havoc and keep fighting for the win. And there's a detail that gets me excited. The early access period for Wreckfest 2 is only lasting 1 year, much less than the 4 years the first game took to leave early access. This shows that Bugbear arrived much more prepared this time, with a solid foundation and a clear plan. When the full launch comes in 2026, along with the PS5 and Xbox Series versions, the expectation is that it will immediately be a complete package, ready for you to call friends for split screen and turn the living room into a virtual demolition arena. Endurance Motorsport Series is an endurance sim scheduled for 2026 that promises to go beyond doing laps and put you in the role of both driver and race engineer, where strategy weighs just as much as the skill to keep the car on the track. It is planned for PC, PS5, and Xbox Series, focusing on multi-class racing and that real, long race atmosphere where nothing goes exactly to plan. What catches my eye immediately is this idea of switching roles. Instead of just being the guy behind the wheel, the game wants you to think like a team. Making decisions and reacting to incidents and weather changes the way an endurance race demands. This completely changes the gameplay energy, because it's not just brake late and accelerate early, it's knowing the right time to be conservative, protect the car, and pick your battles. And speaking of weather, the game is highlighting dynamic weather in a very engineering way, with weather radar showing cloud formations, wind, and wind direction, helping you decide when to stop and switch between slicks, intermediates, or wet tires. A recent trailer even showed cars like the Porsche 963 Hypercar and the 992 GT3R racing at Spa under heavy rain, which already gives that classic endurance feeling. Poor visibility, the track changing every lap, and nerves on edge. Another point that seems very ambitious is the race structure. Multi-class with up to 24 cars on track, and a design thought out for online play in teams of 3 people, each assuming different roles to simulate the real dynamic of a team. At the same time, there is a single-player campaign with AI, and a detail I consider essential in 2026. This single-player part reportedly won't require an online connection. The vibe this game gives off is one of thinking endurance. Winning won't just be about driving the perfect lap, but about surviving the chaos, reading the race, and making good decisions with imperfect information, which is exactly the charm of this category.
It's too late to try to go contain it. A generation fueled by creation. We live lives on a small screen nation. We control the airwaves, no negotiation. I refuse to think we need saving. Something good will come from creation. And when we think that the world is too anxious, we'll adapt, evolve, survive, and save it.
What keeps you up at night, yeah? Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah. I think that we've all had enough. What keeps you up at night, yeah? Make all the
iRacing Arcade is iRacing Studios' bet for a more accessible and pocket-sized game, with stylized visuals and easy-to-pick-up racing, but with enough depth to reward those who like to drive properly. On PC, the launch was delayed and is now scheduled for February 2026 on Steam, $24.99, while the console versions, PS5 and Xbox Series, are set for later in 2026. What gets me here is the concept. It's as if someone put the seriousness of the licenses and tracks of the iRacing ecosystem inside a more arcade cart, without that barrier of entry of heavy simulation. The announcement itself describes the game as a mix of playful art and fun physics designed for all ages, but still with room to truly learn and improve. In terms of content, iRacing Studios has already detailed that the game will debut with 8 cars divided between open wheel, GT, and prototypes, including everything from a Fiat 500 Abarth and a Formula 4 to a Porsche 911 GT3 Cup and a GTP class prototype. Additionally, the launch comes with 14 circuits, including tracks like Imola, Miami, Tsukuba, and Lime Rock, and also marks the debut of Bahrain and Kyalami in an iRacing Studios game. The career mode seems to be the good addiction part of it. The promise is to climb the hierarchy, earn money, buy faster cars, build facilities with research, benefits, and even hire drivers, all while personalizing everything with colors, emotes, and other identity flourishes. And for those who enjoy competing without a long commitment, there is a global time attack with leaderboards and weekly track car rotations, which is that type of system that makes you come back every week just to improve by 0.2. Now, the detail that makes me most optimistic is that iRacing justified the delay by talking about more playtesting and polish on gameplay and career mode, and honestly, this type of game lives or dies on the controller feel and the rhythm of the races. If they nail the balance between fun arcade and clean racing that rewards consistency, iRacing Arcade could become the perfect game for when you want a quick, intense race with that licensed track flavor without needing a sim checklist before hitting the track. Over the Hill is the new game from the creator of Art of Rally, and instead of being about competing, it's about exploring and enjoying the journey. That kind of experience where you drive classic vehicles from the 60 seconds to the 80 seconds through wild biomes inspired by real locations with no ticking clock and no pressure. The launch is scheduled for 2026 on PC, PS5, Xbox Series, and even Nintendo Switch 2. The concept here is quite different from what we usually see in racing games. There's no podium, no first place, just you and up to 3 friends in online co-op crossing valleys, mountains, and difficult terrain, discovering portals that open new areas, completing objectives to unlock vehicles, upgrades, and customizations. It's almost as if it were a slow-paced exploration game, where the journey really is the destination, and you can stop to set up camp, drink a virtual hot chocolate, and just enjoy the view. And this gets me, because there is something relaxing yet challenging about navigating difficult terrain without having to beat anyone. It's you, against the mud, against the car's physics, fighting for traction, against the dynamic weather and day-night cycles that change how you see and read the terrain. When you get stuck in the mud or lose your line on a steep trail, there's no quick restart to recover lost time. You solve the problem, learn from it, and move on. Visually, from what can be seen in the trailers. The game maintains that minimalist and clean aesthetic that made Art of Rally a cult hit, but this time applied to open, more organic environments with iconic vehicles from that golden era of off-road and adventure. And the fact that it has co-op for up to 4 people completely changes the dynamic. You can imagine yourself and friends planning routes, helping each other when someone gets stuck, or simply spreading out across the map to see who finds the coolest secret. Over the Hill seems to be that game for when you want to drive but don't want the stress of competitive racing. You just want to feel the weight of the car, see beautiful landscapes, discover something new, and maybe share that with some friends around a digital campfire. And considering the game has already accumulated 600,000 wish lists on Steam, it seems a lot of people were waiting for exactly this vibe of contemplative off-road adventure. CarX Drift Racing Online 2 is the direct evolution of that game that many people, myself included, got addicted to for its easy drifting and absurd customization, and now in 2026, it finally arrives for PC and consoles with a much more modern foundation. CarX Technologies' plan is to enter early access on Steam now in the first quarter of 2026, with the full launch targeting the end of the year, bringing everything they learned from CarX Street and the mobile version of Drift Racing 3. What excites me most about this sequel is the new damage and wear system. Forget that bodywork that never dents. Now the car deforms for real, and you feel the impact of crashes on performance. Seeing the bumper flying off or the suspension bending after a bad wall tap gives much greater weight to every maneuver, and the Road 3 physics promise to make you feel every imperfection and patch in the asphalt, which totally changes the feel of controlling the car's weight mid-drift. On the visual and customization side, the leap is giant. We are talking about laser-scanned 3D models, 4K support, and a freedom to paint and modify individual parts that makes any JDM fan go crazy. You'll be able to paint even the chassis separate from the body and mount specific builds for each type of event, all running on an engine that finally brings dynamic lighting and weather to their main drift series. Multiplayer should also be much more serious, with ranked drift competitions and a garage management system where you can have multiple copies of the same model, each with a different setup. If you are the type who likes to build a totally beat-up missile car just to train with friends and then switch to an impeccable show car for official competitions, this game is going to be your favorite playground in 2026. Ultimately, CarX Drift Racing Online 2 seems to be the maturation the franchise needed. It keeps that DNA of being a fun game to play on controller or wheel, but adds the layers of realism and technical fidelity that modern simulators demand. Prepare your setup, because the promise is that this will be the definitive game for those who want to burn rubber, customize down to the last screw, and feel the adrenaline of a perfect tandem with friends. The launch of JDM, Japanese Drift Master, on PlayStation 5 has finally gotten a firm date, the 6th of February 2026. After passing through PC and Xbox in 2025, the game arrives on Sony's console, costing $34.99 and bringing the complete package, including all performance updates and content that the developers at Gaming Factory have released since the original debut. For those who love Japanese car culture, this game is a feast because it focuses entirely on the experience of drifting through the winding roads of Japan, with picturesque towns and mountains inspired by real places. On PS5, the differentiator is that it arrives with the Made in USA DLC available on day one, which adds 6 vehicles inspired by classic American muscle cars, perfect for those who want to mix Western style with Eastern tracks. What I find coolest about JDM is how it tries to tell a story. Instead of just being a list of races, you follow the journey of a newcomer named Tuma through manga-style cutscenes, which gives a unique charm to the progression. Seeing the manga pages come to life between one drift and another in the narrow streets of Guntama brings that initial D vibe that every car fan loves, and speaking of which, Pre-orders even get the Akina Phantom, a fictional car that is a clear homage to the legendary AE86. Technically, the game runs on Unreal Engine 5, which guarantees well-detailed scenarios with lighting and dynamic weather that completely change visibility and car behavior on the track. On PlayStation 5, the promise is polished visuals and stable performance at 60 frames per second, plus an interface designed for the controller with 2 driving modes. Arcade, for those who just want to have fun without complications, and a mode more geared towards physics simulation. If you were waiting for the right moment to enter the world of Japanese drifting on your console, 2026 seems to be the year. Besides all the launch content, the game on PS5 comes with improvements to the audio system and new side events that weren't originally on PC, making this version one of the most refined yet for those who want to master the art of drifting in high definition.
I'ma do shit my way, so you can go kick rocks. I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Yeah, I'ma do it my way. Yeah, I'ma do it my way.
Le Mans Ultimate is finally coming to consoles, and that means that in 2026, the PS5 and Xbox Series crowd starts to truly enter the world of hardcore endurance, not just watching WEC on TV, but feeling firsthand what it is to drive a hypercar at dawn at Le Mans. The idea of the game is to be the official experience of the FIA World Endurance Championship and the 24 Hours of Le Mans, not just any arcade racer. So it enters that territory where every lap feels like a mini event, with weather, traffic, and wear stalking you the entire time. The great charm here is that it is born as a heavy PC simulator, using the same physics base as R-Factor 2, focusing on details like tire dynamics, flat spots, and super detailed feedback in the wheel, and this is being adapted for consoles without throwing that depth away. Even on a controller, the game has been reworked to have adjustable presets and assists, so you can go from I just want to enjoy the feeling of being at Le Mans to I want to suffer like a factory team driver fighting with setup and tire wear. It is that type of game that rewards those who like to learn lines, braking, and stint rhythm, not those who just want to beat a time in 2 laps and leave. In terms of content, the promise is very clear. Official WEC grid, Hypercar LMP2, EMS, and LMGT3, licensed tracks and events that follow the seasons, with PC receiving new seasons and DLC from championships like the European Le Mans series, which later also arrive in the game ecosystem as a whole. The Le Mans track isn't just another track. It works with a dynamic day, night cycle, real road 2 system that rubbers in the ideal line, changing grip with marbles, dirt, and even different behavior in dry and wet conditions. In practice, this means that the same curve at 3 p.m. has nothing to do with it at 3 a.m., and you feel that both in lap time and in the tension of every long braking zone. What excites me is that the game doesn't just want to be loose online racing, but to build something long-term, with a single-player career mode planned to start taking shape from 2026 after version 1 on PC. This fits very well with the spirit of endurance. Instead of just picking any car and racing for an hour, the idea is to build a trajectory, learn different categories, and eventually face a 24-hour event with everything configured the way you like. For those who enjoy progression, this is gold. It gives you that feeling that every practice session and every stint is part of a bigger story, not just an isolated race. Development for PS5 and Xbox Series is already underway, with Motorsport Games itself speaking of a realistic window between late 2026 and early 2027, so it is a project thought out calmly, using a specialized partner to port it without breaking what the PC already has. This means that when we play on console, the game will arrive much more matured, with years of patches, physics reformulation, like the new tire models and improved railroad, and extra content already consolidated. If you are a console player who always looked at Assetto Corsa and R-Factor from afar, Le Mans Ultimate has everything to be that endurance simulator that finally puts you inside the most insane category of modern motorsport. Assetto Corsa Rally is that news that stirs any simulation fan. The franchise that has always been synonymous with asphalt is now going to the dirt. And the proposal is to deliver a rally with a serious grip, the kind where you respect every blind corner. And yes, the game already debuted in early access on PC on the 13th of November 2025, but version 1, Zero the Real One Complete, is planned to evolve with much more content, and it is very plausible that 2026 will be the year it starts to become a monster. It's so polished. What catches my attention here is the base. It uses an adapted version of the Assetto Corsa physics engine, refined to handle the type of impact only Rally has: jumps, ruts, the car dancing on uneven ground, and grip changing out of nowhere. Furthermore, the game runs on Unreal Engine 5, and the promise is a dynamic environment where time of day, weather, and surface conditions, temperature and humidity, directly affect traction and car response. In other words, it's not just, it looks pretty. It's pretty and still tries to take you down with real driving variables. Speaking of content, early access started with 10 licensed cars and 4 specials with 18 variations, totaling about 20 miles of scanned roads. Laser scan, including scenarios like Rally Alsace and Rally Wales. The modes also already come with that structure that makes you want to test just one more. Time, attack, and events with online leaderboards, plus free practice, single stage, and rally weekend. And there is a detail I love in rally games: pace notes recorded with professional co-drivers and audio captured from real cars, which helps a lot to sell the sensation of being inside a real stage. Now, the most interesting thing is looking at where this goes in 1. The declared goal includes over 74 miles of roads, 10 specials with over 35 variations, over 30 cars, and new modes, including career and a rally school, which, for those who want to learn the hard way, is practically a dream. There is also the ambition for VR support in the long term, in addition to continuing to expand locations and content over time. In practice, this makes the game look like a platform. You buy it now and watch it grow as a living project. If the final version really fits all this in 2026, the expectation is to see a more surgical rally than the most popular competitors. Less gratuitous spectacle and more of that tense driving, where you finish a section with sweaty palms because you know the smallest error becomes lost time or a bent car. And with physics-based damage and destructible environments, every impact tends to be a bad decision you'll carry until the end of the stage, just the way Rally punishes in real life. Tokyo Xtreme Racer on PS5 has a date. It arrives on the 26th of February 2026, and the feeling is one of seeing a cult classic returning from limbo to a place where it always belonged, on the sofa at night, with the lights off and the sound of the engine almost becoming the bedroom soundtrack. It's not trying to compete with festival racing or pure simulation. The proposal is to drop you into a sealed Tokyo and transform the Shudo Expressway into a battlefield of ego, nerve, and speed. For those who enjoy the more anime side of street racing, but with a very Japanese seasoning of rivalry and ritual, this here has an identity that few modern games manage to copy. The heart of the game is the SP battle spirit point. Instead of winning just by crossing a finish line, you break the opponent by draining their spirit bar as if it were a duel, almost a fighting game disguised as a race. This totally changes the way you drive, because it's not enough to be fast. You have to pressure, disappear in the rearview mirror, choose the moment to take risks, and mainly keep a cool head when the rival pulls up beside you on a tight straight. And I like this because it creates history in every encounter. There are races you win psychologically, not just on the throttle. The setting is practically a character. The Shuto Expressway appears faithfully reproduced, with complex curves, elevation changes, and that midnight atmosphere that makes any neon reflecting on the asphalt seem more dangerous than it should. The disputes are 1 versus 1 and start in the most stylish way possible. You find the rival in traffic and challenge with a flash of the high beams, something the official material itself describes as the trigger for the duel. This structure is perfect for those who enjoy the hunt and rivalry, because every victory feels like one more chapter on this ladder to the top. And yes, there are real cars and lots of customization. The official description talks about racing with real cars and customizing them, and several previews highlight a large roster focused on Japanese brands, very much in the JDM spirit, and dozens of options to tweak visuals and performance. Another cool detail is that the game is comfortable being specific. Instead of giving you 30 different modes, it focuses on this fantasy of nocturnal highway racing, with charismatic rivals and a progression that revolves around dominating the Shuto. For me, this is almost a relief in the current world, where many games try to embrace everything and end up not being the best at anything. The PS5 version arrives costing $49.99, and with pre-orders active on the PlayStation Store. If the PC vibe holds up on the console, the promise is simple and dangerous. Just one more duel turns into 2 hours, and when you realize it, you're already memorizing every corner entry as if it were your way home.